Hi, this is Mark Sehl from the YouTube channel Therapy for the Heart, and I just did a tape on projection and projective identification. I stopped it at the point where I stopped it, not because I was getting emotional. I'm not afraid of that on tape, although this is not a place to display my emotions, but on the other hand, it's nice to see that therapists can be emotional. And we're human beings. But I stopped it because if I let it go any longer, I did it on my iMovie, and I had to cut out 15 seconds, or else it would not go up on YouTube. It only takes, in my case anyway, 15-minute YouTube productions. So that's why I stopped it. So I wanted to say a few words about where I left off, and just to emphasize that it's a very difficult for people to come to be conscious of their feelings of self-hate and self-recrimination. And I give you credit for that, to be able to try it, and myself too, because it's very difficult. And I didn't realize, I've been, as I said, through analysis many years, and I've known these things about myself, but I haven't really known them to the extent that I came to know them this morning emotionally. And it's very hard to... What upset me a lot was the compassion I felt for myself when I realized that I was attacking myself, and those attacks weren't warranted. They came from someone else originally. I didn't create them. I wasn't born with them. And how I treated myself and treat myself, I really felt bad for myself, because I realized that, and being able to be angry at my father and know that he was responsible and not blame myself, was a major achievement that I came to have today. And also that the responsibility also was on my mother's head too. So we're not born this way. It's not in my belief in terms of genes. It's nurture and nature. So so again, I wanted to reemphasize how difficult it is, and if somebody can get to this place very quickly, I think it's unusual. That's why therapy takes some time, because we have these things inside us that create all sorts of problems, self-recrimination, self-attacks, and it's not easy to have the feelings for ourselves and tolerate them, and also the feelings towards our parents, who also were our love objects, and we also respect. And in terms of my father, he was a stable one in my life, and in order to be really angry at him, to be able to be angry at him, that would have meant that I, in my mind, could lose him. So that was more precarious for me to accept those feelings, as I did this morning, to the extent that I did them, and live with them. In terms of projective identification, there was a case, Talk 8 and Talk 9, that I did on my YouTube, and that was really a case of projective identification, but I didn't identify it as that, and I'm not so... it takes me a while to study terms and the labels and to get the significance of the meaning of them. But however, it's right in there in Talk 8 and Talk 9. And I worked with a patient there, you can refer back to it, but she was very attacking of me. You're worthless, you're no good, you're not helping me, you don't understand me. All these things, gradually I began to really feel bad about myself. It wasn't, she was attacking me, and she indeed was attacking me. She was very critical. So that was real. And to be annoyed at her was an objective reaction to somebody, objective countertransference reaction to her. Anybody would be mad at her. But also I began to absorb her attacks, her projections on me. It was really projections of her, how she felt about her mother, and how her mother felt about her. Her mother said those same things about her, that she was no good, she was incompetent, she wasn't studying hard enough, she wasn't doing this, she wasn't doing that, and she wasn't doing that. And one analyst rejected her because she said she couldn't work with her anymore. She was so frustrating. So projective identification, I began to believe that I was worthless, I wasn't any good, I wasn't a good therapist, I wasn't incompetent. I looked for help from one person to the next, and I began increasingly to feel despairing about myself and my work. So I resolved that. I went to a good supervisor, and she said, that's in the tape, but she said, how do you feel about this patient? And I said, I hate her. And that was a good feeling. I couldn't accept that, just like I couldn't accept the hatred that I had from my father. That's a little bit more difficult. But anyway, once I resolved that, I accepted what this patient's mother couldn't accept in herself towards her own daughter, and so she had to do the opposite. She had to be close to her. She had to be one with her. She had to smother her, so as her daughter would not be an independent person. Because anytime her daughter was independent, her mother would have panic because she was so dependent upon her daughter's existence for her own self-feelings. Too bad, but that's often happens. So that's projective identification. That's in my example of it. Go to tape talk 8 and also 9. Many people have liked those tapes. So projection, you ascribe some of your feelings which are unacceptable, put them onto somebody else. We all do that. Projective identification is you really begin to believe, like I just said, that I'm worthless, I'm a piece of shit, I'm not a very good therapist. And that became identified very much with the patient's projection onto me of her worthless self. There was another person that I worked with who was very depressed. I had mentioned that in the tape, one of the tapes, and I carried her feelings. Bion said, we're like containers as therapists, and we contain the feelings and feelings that a patient cannot tolerate and bear within themselves. So all of a sudden, I started to feel extremely depressed, very lonely, and what it was I was experiencing what this patient couldn't experience with her mother, because her mother was so out of it that she couldn't be in touch with her daughter at all. And the daughter had a malformation in her body, and she always said, I have this malformation, nobody can see it, and her mother couldn't see it. It was right there. After a while, I got to see it and noticed it and said, why don't you go to the doctor and check it out? And indeed, she did have it. But that was kind of a metaphor about not being able to be seen and recognized, because she was saying, here, something's wrong with me. And it really wasn't just the malformation in her body. It was something's... You're not recognizing me. You don't notice that I'm depressed. I come home from school. You don't ask me any questions about how my day was, what I studied, anything. You don't help me with my homework. You're there, drunk, and you're isolated. That isolates me. She was extremely depressed most of her life. So I helped her a lot. She didn't try to kill herself with me, and she did with 7 other therapists, or 7 times with many other therapists. So I had a good supervisor at that time too. Can't take all the credit. I took the credit for really being tough and not being scared and not hospitalizing her when she said she wanted to stick her head in the oven. So that's all I wanted to say about that tape that I just did, that to identify it a little bit more and clarify projection and projective identification by using case examples, which is the best thing that I can do, refer you back to those tapes. And again, compassion for yourself. If you can't have it, it's understandable, because these are very deep psychic wounds that we have, that we inherit. We didn't create them. And have some gentleness with you, even though it's very difficult with yourself, and even though it's very difficult to do. And if you want some help with that, you can always feel free to come talk to me, or I can try to find a therapist for you, or work on it yourself as much as you can to change these terrible self-attacks that we have towards ourselves into compassion, self-compassion, and self-love. Okay, so this is Mark Sehl for the YouTube channel Therapy for the Heart, and I speaking spontaneously as I can muster up myself to do it today, and other times I need to write up a paper because they tend to be a little bit more complicated. But these 2 talks are just here it is. So, and I hope you like the channel. If you do, and press the like button, and thanks to all my followers. I'm sure you'll have comments about these 2 tapes, particularly the other one, pro and con, and I'll respond to them. Okay, so thanks again. Press the like button, and this is Mark Sehl for the YouTube channel Therapy for the Heart, signing off. Bye.